So this one time, my wife Kala kicked me out of our house after she cheated on me with some guy from her work. I felt this indescribable whirlwind of emotions. First anger, then sadness, and finally disbelief. It was as though the ground beneath my feet had crumbled. I never expected something so drastic from Kala. We had laughed, cried, and grown together, weaving what I thought was a solid tapestry of shared dreams and experiences. But this tapestry was now in tatters, torn by her unfathomable betrayal. As I stared at the door of our home, the place that had witnessed so many happy moments, it felt alien and cold. The audacity of the situation struck me hard. It was one thing to deal with betrayal, but her decision to throw me out of the very home we shared added another layer of hurt that I didn't know how to process. The home was our sanctuary, a place where we could be ourselves, with no barriers, no pretenses. For her to cast me out of it like an outsider was salt on an already painful wound. I remember standing there, my bag hanging off my shoulder, looking at the door that was now shut tightly against me. The air around me felt heavy, suffocating, with a dense fog of betrayal clouding my heart and mind. I kept replaying recent events over and over again in my head. Had there been signs? Could I have seen this coming? My mind was a chaotic mess of doubts and disbelief. Part of me expected it to be some awful nightmare that I'd wake up from. You know those dreams where everything seems perfectly real until you suddenly awaken, heart racing but relieved to find it was all just a figment of sleep? I genuinely hoped, just standing there, that life would grant me a similar reprieve. But life, as it turned out, wasn't that kind. One thing that stung deeply was the fact that my trust, the kind that takes years to build, had been shredded in an instant. And it wasn't just trust in Kala, it was trust in myself too. Trust in my own judgment, my ability to understand people, and in the love and commitment we supposedly shared. Every thought broke into a million little shards of grief. But as much as I wanted to wallow in despair and questions, the practical problem of not having a place to stay came to the forefront. In theory, it was simple. I needed to leave, find another roof over my head, and give Kala space. The actual act of doing so, however, was painful beyond belief. Imagine the place you call home, synonymous with safety and peace, suddenly turning into something hostile, unwelcoming. All this tumbled through my mind like a relentless storm, as I gathered what I could and made a hurried exit, leaving behind the chaos and confusion that had festered within those walls. The shock of being kicked out, combined with waking reality, left me standing on the curb, the city's sounds dissolving into a dull background hum. I was raw, hurt, and desperately in turmoil over how someone I loved so deeply, who once claimed to love me just as profoundly, could betray and expel me from one of the central spaces of my life. Rage simmered under the surface, but the hurt took precedence over any other emotion, and I felt utterly powerless, standing there. It was all too overwhelming, and for the first time, I felt the acute sting of betrayal mixed with the unfamiliar pang of homelessness. Rootless, closed out of my own existence, pondering over the heartbreak that Kala's unfathomable actions had caused. I went to stay with my friend for a few days, seeking refuge as I tried to sort through the chaos Kala had plunged my life into. As I crashed on his couch, every thought seemed to circle back to the same haunting question: how could she do this to us? In the solitude of those nights, my mind became a courtroom of sorts, with memories called as witnesses. I replayed countless moments, seeking any sign or clue I might have missed. Had there been hints of her distance? Had the laughter masked something more sinister that I was too blinded by love to see? I recalled late nights of intimacy, sharing hopes and dreams, conversations about future plans, the kind where two kids are envisioned and trips abroad seem only a step away. Yet, bleak reality had cruelly colored those dreams, tinting them with betrayal. Day by day, I found myself dissecting every argument we ever had, the cadence of Kala's words, and even her silences in an attempt to decipher the puzzle she had become. I couldn't comprehend how someone with whom I had built a universe could casually toss it aside. Sitting with my friends, their comforting presence sometimes felt futile against the monologue in my head. They offered words of solace and advice, which often became blurs amidst my internal narrative. It was during one of those reflective evenings, while staring at my friend's ceiling, that a painful realization dawned on me. I had often surrendered pieces of myself for her comfort. There were instances when I might have ignored my own needs, prioritizing hers because loving someone, especially someone so deeply entwined with every facet of your life, felt like the right decision then. Now, pondering each one through a hindsight lens laced with sorrow, I wasn't sure of anything. Time felt warped in those days, an odd juxtaposition of racing thoughts and sluggish seconds. Each tick of the clock reverberated through the quietness, echoing the void that had unceremoniously been carved into what I once proudly called home. Yet, amid all this, one thing became clear. Despite the turmoil, I had to confront Kala and the situation she had thrust upon me. It wasn't just for myself, but for the years and emotions involuntarily trapped in this cycle of grief I never chose. Something had to give. I couldn't exist in this purgatory forever. As clarity took form, I resolved to face the whirlwind once more. The decision felt like a small victory rising from the ashes of devastation, even if I wasn't quite sure how or where it would lead me. Before this upheaval, I had envisioned life's trajectory as uncertain, yet firmly grounded by solid trust. Now, all that lingered was a hollow ache and a bitter desire for resolution. Turning back time wasn't possible, but at least taking back some semblance of control seemed within reach. My next actions would be driven not by the heartbreak that Kala's betrayal caused, but by the necessity of rebuilding the life and peace I deserved. Facing Kala, confronting our shattered bonds, was not a choice anymore. It was a matter of reclaiming my reality amidst the fragments that lay scattered before me. With a newfound sense of urgency and determination, I knew I couldn't let things fester any longer. I had to reclaim what was mine. After days spent wrestling with my thoughts and emotions, I finally mustered the courage to return to my own doorstep. Taking a deep breath, I stood in front of my house, nerves and anticipation coursing through my veins. This was it. No more indecision. As I knocked on the door, each tap resonated with the hope of confronting the chaos that had consumed my life. It was a few moments before the door opened. There stood Kala, apparently taken aback by my presence. Her surprise mirrored the brood confrontation lurking in the back of my mind, one that was ready to spill over at her sight. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice a mix of incredulity and defiance. "We need to talk," I said, striving to keep my tone measured. Standing firm, I refused to let the hurt I felt overwhelm the conversation. But my request was met with resistance. "I'm not letting you in," she retorted sharply, crossing her arms in a stubborn front. All those nights spent questioning, the incessant whirlwind of betrayal, surged in that moment. Yet, as I stood there, I had a sudden recollection of a crucial detail. The house was mine. I had purchased it before our paths ever crossed, and the title was solely in my name. "Kala," I started, trying to bridge the chasm between justice and personal struggles. "This is my house. You've got no right to keep me out of it." Recognition flashed in her eyes, quickly replaced by a defiant glare. "You can't just come here and act like everything is fine. You don't get to waltz back and pretend this never happened." I knew this confrontation wasn't just about the house. It was about finally asserting myself, about taking back control from the tumultuous sea of emotional manipulation I had unwittingly waded into. "I am not here to pretend," I replied, feeling the weight of the situation settle in heavily. "I am here to talk, to sort through what's happened, but you're right, it can't be ignored." Her anger was palpable, spilling over in a tirade of shouting. Frustration laced her accusations, and I felt the sting of each word even as I clung to the resolve I had carefully crafted over those lonely nights. When reasoning with Kala pointed toward a bitter cul-de-sac, there was only one course of action left. Reluctantly, I dialed the police. I explained the situation calmly, every sentence a reminder of the madness my world had unraveled into. The officers responded promptly. As authority interceded, Kala had no choice but to relent, unlocking the door that led to my home. Despite the chill of her fury enveloping the corridor, I took the first step back inside, reclaiming not just a physical space, but a part of myself as well. As I walked past the threshold, I realized, perhaps for the first time, that I was stepping onto ground where my healing might finally begin. Taking a stand hadn't been easy, but against the backdrop of shadows and fragments, it marked the beginning of rebuilding a future where hope might one day kindle anew. Inside, the silence felt heavy, punctuated only by the echo of Kala's departing footsteps. It was a bittersweet victory, knowing that despite the rightful restoration of my home, our journey together had come to such a broken impasse. Her absence, a stark reminder of everything we once shared, hung in the air, occasionally triggering those lingering threads of doubt and anger that had wrapped around my heart. But the immediate sense of relief couldn't be overshadowed. I was home. The very walls seemed to whisper a familiar comfort, grounding me in reality even as the emotional whirlwind tried to pull me under. Kayla's bags, hastily packed, were clutched tightly as she made her way to the door, murmuring curses under her breath. Without another word, she crossed the threshold for the last time, leaving echoes of what our life together had been, a complexity of moments now boxed away with her belongings. Standing alone in the now echoing space, I took a moment to survey the remnants of shared life. The reality of reclaiming the house came not from pushing anyone out, but from pulling myself back in, from the chaos, the heartache, the confusion. It was time to rebuild, brick by emotional brick, paving the way for something new and wholly mine. Making that decision to begin anew, I realized that healing needed more than just physical space. I needed help navigating the emotional wreckage left in the wake of Kala's betrayal. So I reached out and began seeing a therapist. These sessions became a lifeline, offering a safe harbor where I could voice my pain, process the events that had transpired, and start to work through my feelings. Each appointment felt like another step on the path to understanding not just Kala's actions, but my thoughts and responses too. Day by day, I focused on piecing my life back together, looking forward to the moments of clarity and peace that were starting to reappear. I poured effort into finding happiness again, urging myself to embrace the single life with its possibilities, rather than viewing it as a void of lost futures. The fear of vulnerability tried to hold me back, but determination won over. I was choosing to look ahead rather than backward, embracing this change as a chance to find not just joy, but meaningful, lasting contentment. It was daunting at first, but bit by bit, resilience planted its roots. Moving forward didn't mean erasing the experiences with Kala, but learning from them to create a life shaped by my own terms, one day at a time. Edit. I'm not a writer by any means, but reflecting back, being in that whirlwind of emotions felt incredibly chaotic. It seemed everything I knew unraveled, leaving me grappling with intense regret and anxiety about my perceived mistakes. I found that reminiscing over past relationships often isn't productive, so I typically refer to past partners simply as wife or girlfriend, without attaching further sentimentality. This approach helps me focus on the present and future. Now, I am in a new relationship, yet, admittedly, I hold doubts about marriage. The experience with Kala has left its mark, shaping my beliefs about love and commitment.